Matt, you and I are both people who come from pretty significant amount of privilege. It would probably be unwise for us to wade into the waters of things that have been going on in our country, socially and politically and culturally, except to say that we have a lot of support for the folks who are struggling, and we hope everybody stays safe. That being said, Pierre, our executive producer, reached out on Facebook to the Bill Simmons podcast, and I'm going to read an excerpt of what executive producer Pierre said. Bill really pissed me off as a black man and father to blame his lack of judgment on him being 50. He should know better, and this backlash, unfortunately, is much deserved.
I screwed up.
Executive producer Pierre. Thank you, of course, to all our producers.
I would note that Pierre's sentiments, I agree with them.
And now, back to the jokes.
This is an amazing podcast. Nephew Kyle said it was top 5 since he's been producing.
Listen, if Nephew Kyle says it's top 5, even if you can't hear him, he's got to be right. It's the Bill Simmons podcast. I'm Chris.
And I'm Matt.
I love these guys.
Matt, there were 3 podcasts 2 weeks ago. The first was with Russello. That was 2 hours, 30 minutes, and 37 seconds long. The second was with The Undertaker. It was 1 hour, 56 minutes, and 39 seconds long. I liked listening to what he had to say, but it wasn't a real dynamic or vibrant interview.
Yeah, he's interesting.
And then the third one, Matt, of 2 weeks ago. First Concepcion and House, and then Steven Jackson and Matt Barnes. 1 hour, 43 minutes, and 8 seconds. It's the Bill Simmons podcast.
This is a good podcast. A lot of stuff going on.
Here we go.
Let's fucking go.
Matt, on the Russello podcast, issues with whether or not sports is or is not a plural word.
We know when sports comes back.
I mean, if he had said when sport comes back, or if he had said when sports come back, but if you're going to put a plural sounding word immediately in front of a singular verb, well, then the Bill Simmons podcast is going to be coming for you. Matt, if you were to make an Oreo cookie of things the ringer does, what would be the creamy center?
The podcast?
Almost. At 48 seconds.
We are not stopping with the content stuff.
The content
okay.
stuff. Yeah.
The stuff. Yeah.
And he's not saying they're going to have double content stuff.
Right.
Point. But there will.
If you're not going to eat the double stuff ones, don't bother.
You've always been anti-single stuff.
Yeah, they're terrible.
At 107, reverse Canadian pronunciation.
Season 1 will be about
Bill, it's a boot. Bill then goes on to mistakenly call HQ Trivia HQ.
the rise and fall of HQ. We're really proud of that one.
At 203 Pearl Jam, which was a different song, Matt.
Yes, it was the present tense from the end of the documentary. God, that feels like forever ago.
Don't remind the listeners, Matt. At 536, This Swallow.
And the public...
At 802, This Swallow.
Because big city...
At 813, This Swallow.
New York ends up trading...
At 1423, Something is Missing.
Because now you're put him with Allen Houston.
I think what's missing is ING. Now you're putting him with Allen Houston.
Yes.
At 1518, This Swallow.
Because now you're put him with Allen Houston.
At 1611, Matt, I've heard the multiverse theory. I've heard the many universes theory, but I don't know that it works either or.
To me, the alternate universe of this isn't...
Either you have one universe or you have many universes, but I don't think you have two. I guess the way it would have to work, Matt, is there's been two universes all along. At a certain point, they diverged. And it was right when Michael Jordan was deciding whether or not he was going to stay with Chicago in 1998. Up until that point, 100% even.
Yeah, you would never know which universe you were in.
Roman Empire, the same. World War I, the same. World War II, the same. But in 1998, based on a sporting event in America, they diverged. At 1825, Swallow.
Free will. So if you're the...
And then Swallow.
Bulls, would you...
And then at 1831, Swallow.
Starks, and one other piece.
Matt, do you know what a pinnacle is?
It's the top.
An upright architectural member. A structure or formation suggesting a pinnacle, specifically a lofty peak, the highest point of development or achievement. Listen to Bill try and fail to use pinnacle at 2029.
Super famous people who've climbed the pinnacle.
Did they climb a structure or formation suggesting a pinnacle?
No.
Did they climb the highest point of development or achievement?
I don't believe so.
Okay, it must be this one. Upright architectural member.
That's the one.
See, the point is, Matt, I don't think you climb a pinnacle. I think you reach it. At 2207, possible guerrilla marketing, but more likely Bad talking.
Tim Grover say 5 guys were at the door.
What he thinks is they're going to be paying so much attention to my uncredited 5 Guys promo that they're not going to notice I just said, Tim Grover say.
Tim Grover say.
Me favorite caveman hamburger place, 5 Guy. Tim Grover say, delicious. At 23:41, bit of a debate here over biggest city of assholes.
You and I both know what city that is.
Philly.
It's Philly. Runner-up Boston, Massachusetts.
Matt?
Defensive.
Matt, you definitely believe Philly, biggest asshole city.
Yeah, I agree.
We would say generously, most passionate fans who are willing to exhibit their passionateness through violence.
Yes.
At 24:45, this swallow.
Pippin.
At 27:19, energy measured in moments.
Every moment of energy that I expend.
I'm sorry, I just can't make it tonight. All my moments are used up. Other things you can't use when trying to expend energy, this at 27:25.
I can't spend too much of the tank.
That tank is just too valuable. I'm not going to use the turret. I'm not going to use the treads.
If the tank is currency, isn't it like, I will trade you 1 tank? Like, what's the scenario in which you're like, well, here's the thing. We'll take it apart, and then we'll use the pieces as individual currency.
At 27:42, if you're able to say the word waiting successfully enough times, you earn this botch.
Waiting for the right spot.
3/4 of them were fine. Then rating.
Waiting for the right spot.
I think you just got cocky, Matt.
Yeah, that's it.
At 28:52, lying.
I'm not a huge hyperbole guy.
In fact, he is the smallest of all the hyperbole guys. Very,
Patently
very
untrue.
lowest.
I screwed up.
At 33:52, this swallow.
This is going to be a game I'm probably going to have to...
At 36:46, Bill thinks Juanita Jordan's absence from the Michael Jordan documentary was no accident.
For ignoring his wife completely, his ex-wife, which I think was probably purposeful, right?
They did a 10-hour documentary to suggest that they left something out by accident.
At the end, they were like, oh, shit. We have all this footage. We edited it all together. We forgot about his wife.
At 37:53, this Joe Bluth nominee.
His 2 of his closest business associates.
At 40 minutes and 26 seconds, some planes are simply more fragile than others.
That was a delicate plane to land, but that was a pretty honest...
Matt, are you a fan of jigsaw puzzles?
Love them.
As you know, jigsaw puzzles are always, and they always apparently are in 3 dimensions. They're not flat like some of us might erroneously believe. At 43:06.
It's like a jigsaw puzzle, and you need to somehow pull off 11 of the pieces of it to make it work. And if you're missing one of the pieces, the whole thing could fall apart.
This is the most hideously botched analogy, Matt.
I don't understand. So the puzzle is 13 pieces. No, 12 pieces.
Well, you need to pull off 11. So
Right.
my thought is,
So right from the
pulling off
beginning-
11 out of 12. Maybe it's a 22-piece jigsaw puzzle, and he's saying you just need to do half for it to work, but I don't know.
So there are 11 that need to come out, but then there's one that's like indispensable.
Yes.
And if you don't have that one, you're that's it. It's over.
Or maybe he's saying there's 11 total pieces because you have to have them all. And if you don't have all 11, which makes perfect sense because you just have 2 rows of 5 and a row of 1. It's such a divisible prime number for a puzzle architect to come up with. Puzzle architect.
Puzzle architects.
And then, if you don't put all 11 pieces of the puzzle together correctly, the puzzle can fall apart. Presumably like someone kicking over a Lincoln log cabin. Because otherwise, how does it fall? Unless you're doing it like on a hill?
It's on a hill. You pull the puzzle pieces out, and then somehow that makes it roll down the hill.
Matt, have you ever walked on a sidewalk with another person?
Yeah, sure.
Was that one of those single file walks, or did you walk side by side?
No, it's one of those. It's very narrow.
So what did you do?
We just had to yell so that the person behind you could hear you.
That's probably smart. It would be in keeping with the COVID mandates, as Bill seems to indicate at 47:44.
Walking on opposite sides of the sidewalk.
This seems to me like you're not even on the sidewalk. Like there's a sidewalk, but each person has to walk in the grass to either side.
Oh, yeah. Smart. That
the
would
sidewalk in
socially
between.
Distant. Guess what is now more important than ever, especially when it comes, for some reason, to Miller time?
I don't know.
It's your friends.
Oh, how did I not guess that?
At 47:58.
Connecting with friends over a beer. It might look different, but it's more important than ever. And
I guess it's still important. Guess how long Miller Lite has been Bill's allegedly favorite beer?
At least since, I would say, let's give him the benefit of the doubt, maybe like 19.
You're close, but it's much, much younger.
Oh.
48-37.
it's also been my favorite beer ever since I was a kid.
I can't believe I didn't think of that. It's been his beer since he was a child.
At 48-53, this botch.
Miller Brewing Company in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
At 51-27, this laughter. At 52-08, Bill thinks this, but I don't think Bill knows what he's thinking.
Optimistic Bill this week. I think the optimistic, pessimistic. And, I'm sure.
That's the whole sentence. I think the optimistic, pessimistic. What he means is, I think the people who see the glass as half full, the people who see the glass as half empty, I am done with this thought. Matt, one of the important things to do in COVID is not only to not be around many people, it's to not have them. At 59-49.
They've taken care of themselves, not had that many people, not been around that many people, things like that.
What does it mean to not have had that many people?
Not had that many people.
There's only one conclusion, Matt.
Yes.
Boning.
Yes.
As long as you have remained fairly chaste, probably no dong corona.
Yes.
Maybe we can get row.com on this somehow. Let's hear from Kyle at 103-36.
Kyle, have you been out? Kyle? He's lying.
What is he lying about?
I was going to say, so here's what we know. Kyle said something.
Kyle?
Bill believes it was a lie.
How many people at the lake? Kyle's been amazing.
At 110-32, this unnecessary article.
Back to the baseball for 1 second.
At 118-16, I am not a mathematician. But as a mathematician, I am offended.
Celts come down from behind by 17, but that's the game where Maxwell goes in the stands.
If they're behind by 17, what are they coming down to? I feel like what they would be doing is coming back from behind by 17.
Yeah.
But if they're coming down from behind by 17, man, I get the feeling that the game ended with them down by 25.
It seems like it.
It was really tough there in the fourth quarter, but we were able to extend their lead by an extra 8 points. At 118-55, this Joe Bluth nominee.
It's like way worse. They're like, and you can see like.
At 119-26, Matt, it turns out many events have more than one turning point, and one of those is the most important one.
The pivotal turning point.
There was a turning point.
Right.
And then there was another one. But then after that, there was a third one. And it was like, this is the one.
I'm thinking maybe he's thinking about IndyCar races, and those do have a lot of turns, which would be points in the race where the cars would turn. And of all those turning points, maybe one of the turns is the most pivotal one?
Yeah, maybe that's what he meant.
At 125-18, botch.
Points per day pre-pandemic.
And botch.
Is now receiving 3,000 to 4,000 a day.
At 126-04, botch.
Crime and identity theft or monitor all transactions at
127-29, this swallow.
2 hours. Fourth quarter.
At 128-38, possibly the most popular, bizarre Bill Simmons usage of this podcast.
I think we need to filet mignon eyes. Filet mignon eyes.
Like this.
Filet mignon eyes.
My theory on that is that Bill was trying to say it a number of times to get it right one time and then use that take, which is something we often accuse him of not doing, which is just re-saying things or fixing his errors. But Kyle instead just leaves all the takes in.
Kyle, did you do that? That's a lie.
Oh, he's lying.
What you're saying is it was a mistake.
I like it.
Terrible old man joke. At 133:30, my notes say ass.
And he asks.
Yeah.
That's because he said ass.
Yeah, he said ass. He means asks.
And he asks,
No need for the K. At 134:37. Now, Matt, I have heard of this before, this term that Bill is, I think, trying to get across. The idea that there is a big swinging dick, or that someone is a big swinging dick, or has a big swinging dick. And the point, I think, is utterly, utterly missed.
It's the ultimate fucking dick swing.
Yeah, see, the point of having or being a big swinging dick is not being able to go out and swing your dick in a certain way, or to earn separate and multiple different graded dick swings. You can't have the number one of all time dick swing.
Right.
What you can still be, however, is a big swinging dick, and then perhaps as a result of some achievement, you're more of a big swinging dick, or you have more of a big swinging dick. But it's not the swinging that matters. At 134:58, Bill still misunderstands.
They're just swinging dicks.
Nope, they aren't. They aren't doing that literally, of course, but they're not doing it figuratively either.
It would be weird to see.
Matt, you should check out the internet. What does not happen, Matt, is men who want to compare their perceived individual values do not gather, even figuratively, and see whose penis is able to swing back and forth better or longer or more wildly. That is simply not how it works. At 135.34, this laughter. At 136.27, Joe Bluth nominee.
No, because they're covered. They're
At 141.20.
has all the savvy and he's strong and they're just their system.
At some point, Bill's pilot overrode his mental process. And for that reason, the word system appeared in that list. At 150.34, this is Joe Bluth nominee.
What is he adding to this? He sucks.
At 155.53, count the C's.
Clearly.
Never miss a chance to clear your throat. At 156.07, unnecessary article.
And I'm sure the Utah was built.
Remember how a team earlier, Matt, came down from behind? I think the same construction is at play here at 157.05.
As Scotty's kind of just rising to the ground.
Unless he's rising to the ground, perhaps from a basement, which I don't think was probably at play in a playoff game. Scotty was definitely rising from the ground.
Yes.
At 209.57, this snort.
No hip.
At 211.12, I think he means casts.
They've had
That's
15
just
casts.
There's no attempt made to use the T sound. At 213.15, more amateur genealogy.
Some sort of DNA thing when they're like, oh, he's starting to feel it.
You know, when you have the DNA that makes you feel it.
Good players have, at the genetic level, the ability to see who's feeling stuff. At 218.57, it's lucky there was no guillotine involved.
He still has this. He has the head.
The head. Bill, once again, we assume gesturing to something on an audio podcast. Then he clarifies by saying what he's gesturing to is the head. Not his head, the head. At 219.42, my notes say Luke Longley.
Like Isaiah's calling for Luke Longley. Luke Longley, pretty.
I guess it turns out to be
That's a
tougher
tough
to say
name.
than I thought. At 229.39, this botch.
Cybercrime and identity theft.
At 229.55, bad branding.
2 more BS podcasts this week.
We'll be back after this.
System.
Matt, we use Anchor.fm for the Bill Simmons podcast. Anchor.fm allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer, and it's free. Anchor will not only let you record and edit, you can also distribute your podcast to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more through Anchor. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership, which is handy for the Bill Simmons podcast. Anchor.fm has everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. So download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor.fm to get started. Matt, somehow Bill was able to wring almost 2 hours of The Undertaker, which was quite an undertaking.
I like it.
Terrible. At 104, this swallow.
May 20th, season 1, boom bust, tackling.
At 118, Bill once again unable to promote the HQ Trivia podcast.
The trivia app HQ.
I think that's 5 times he's failed to say
At least.
trivia directly after HQ.
Yeah.
We'll be doing more than just HQ.
Can't be bothered.
It is called Boom Bust, The Rise and Fall of HQ, hosted by Alyssa Beresnack.
At 222, Pearl Jam. At 836, this swallow.
Greeting you, applauding.
Matt, you're a huge wrestling fan, of course.
Of course.
At 1538, Bill tries to discuss a move where one wrestler lifts the other wrestler vertically above the other wrestler's head, and then they both fall backward onto each other's backs. Does that make sense? Did I even explain that close?
Yeah, no, I think that's right.
All right. You know what that's called?
Suplex.
Almost. Turns out there's a little bit more nuance to the pronunciation, as Bill knows, at 1538.
Even just the German suplexes.
It's not a flex that comes after a word. If it came before the word, of course, it would be a preflex.
Preflex, I get it. Okay, good.
At 3959, it's a new thing, man. False singular.
Okay.
Wherever you get your podcast.
Wherever you get that podcast. Hopefully it's the Bill Simmons podcast.
Just the one.
Yeah.
If that's the only one you get, it's not going to make a lot of sense.
Well, as long as we have good
That's
quotes from the BS pod. Also, Matt, I did want to point out, we just jumped ahead slightly more than 24 minutes. Now we're going to jump ahead from 3959 to 5502 for Bill to attempt to say this word.
And it's just getting more and more contentious.
That's what happens when there is content between you and us.
Contentious.
Robot judges.
Contentious.
Contentious.
fail. At 102.39, this laughter. At 111.30, finally, Bill's favorite verb.
Slowly plowing through.
At 112.01, Bill finally recognizes that if you're going to have creators who do not direct shows do a commentary, they should not specifically be calling it a director's commentary.
You can hear them break it down almost like a director's commentary.
Almost.
You think somebody told him? There's no way, right?
Maybe he just figured it out on the fly, like, well, hang on a second. It's definitely not a director's commentary. They didn't direct anything. Matt, when I'm watching something, what I like to do is take a step back, as we all do, and measure my reaction to whatever it is I'm watching. Bill's explaining it at 133.41.
You gauge so much of your own reaction watching something from what the fans think.
When those fans think something, I think to myself, how does this impact my reaction to what I'm watching? And then I measure that. At 138.46 is Joe Bluth nominee.
Wait, what the fuck? Wait, what? Wait, and there was this whole inner game.
At 141.23, it's clear this happened at some point.
20, 30 wrestlers have their own reality show at some point at this.
At some point in what? This era? This epoch? This decade seems like the easy go-to one. Remember that time Bill made a joke about how Mallory Rubin was taking a dump right before she came on?
Yes.
Pretty sure we hear Undertaker as he's podcasting while taking a dump because we hear this in the background.
You were the last one who folded.
Was it a flush?
It sounded like it.
Yeah, but nobody's going to tell Undertaker when he was taking a dump.
Yes.
Also, wasn't this all on video? We'll just go back and see if he's like randomly grimacing or like doing the Buffalo Bill as he tries to get a word out. Was that a real big fat poop?
All right, I like that.
At 145.23, this laughter. Naturally, Bill does not notice the same things the Undertaker notices because Bill does not notice anything he does at 148.01.
I've got a little bit of a tick where I say, you know, a lot. I don't know if you've noticed it, but
No, I didn't notice any ticks.
Well,
Yeah, he doesn't notice any ticks, period. Not you, Undertaker, and definitely not him. Matt, what do they call those monuments that they build to make sure that laws are prosecuted or rights are asserted within a certain period of time?
I don't know this.
At 148.33, Bill reminds us all.
Just stories about things you did in Vegas that the statute of limitations have expired.
Oh, right. No chance he means statute of limitations.
No, it couldn't possibly. We'll be right back after this.
Matt, this is the third podcast of, definitely 2 weeks ago. This is one that starts out with House and Concepcion and then goes on with Steven Jackson and Matt Barnes. Matt, listen to this great triumph 42 seconds in.
Boom bust. The rise and fall of HQ Trivia.
It took that long,
Six
Matt,
is the charm.
but he's finally able to correctly say all the words in his company's podcast's title. Pearl Jam at 2 minutes. At 3:40, this laughter. At 10:29, I think there might be either an extra ni or an extra ing in this word. Listen closely.
The accompanying.
What do you think?
Accompanying.
At 12:52, this laughter.
Come on.
At 17 minutes and 2 seconds, this swallow.
I think that's fair.
At 18:34, when you're not burning the candle at both ends, but when you are using waxed-based illumination.
Being out, burning the candle piece of it.
When you want to describe a specific piece of it that involves being out and simply having the warming glow, the romance of a candle burning.
Okay.
At 24:59, this swallow.
I'm just not doing it
At 25:11, this swallow.
for the bad guys normally. Tiger Peyton Manning.
Matt, if there's one thing we know about, it's sports podcasts that are bad. We are proud to be part of the most.
A lot of people are creating sports podcasts. Most of them are bad.
I feel like he was calling us out, Chris.
I know what he was doing. He was talking about podcasts that are about sports, whereas the Bill Simmons podcast is about the Bill Simmons podcast. We are a sports podcast,
Okay.
not a sports podcast. At 26:15, this Joe Bluth nominee.
How did you decide
At 31:40, interesting turn of phrase for when people are tired.
everyone's deer in the headlights, everyone's demolished?
He might just mean sad or demoralized. That almost
Drunk.
might. Is there a chance he's trying to say demoralized and he just is like, well, it's definitely a D word, and that it has an M and it ends in ED.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
At 37:23, they had a basketball game, and suddenly a basketball game broke out.
And all of a sudden, everybody's playing basketball.
At 41.18, this Joe Bluth nominee.
Give me I want a contract now. What did you sign for, like
At 44.20, this Swallow.
4 or 5? If you put,
Oh, I think it's a snake noise, Matt, at 50.26. My favorite. I'm going to keep pitching snake noises on the Bill Simmons podcast until Bill stops making snake noises. At 52.06, Bill brags.
because I was sitting close.
Rich man sits close. Also, don't you think it would have been fascinating to have done this interview after everybody recognized the injustice of the George Floyd killing?
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Then we could have had Steven Jackson and Matt Barnes' response to that. By the way, Steven Jackson and Matt Barnes never really liked him as NBA players. I'm not saying they were bad players. They just seemed sort of unlikable. I was really
Matt
impressed.
Barnes in particular. Yeah. Matt Barnes, the guy who I don't think allegedly, I think did drive like 3.5 hours to confront Derek Fisher, possibly because Derek Fisher was dating Matt Barnes' ex-wife and like was going to start a big fight over it. Now seems like a reasonable,
articulate guy. Like I kind of wonder, did Derek Fisher deserve a woman? Because I think if I talked to Matt Barnes and he explained,
he would convince me.
I would be like, that's a pretty good point, dude. That seems like a problem. Also, if I was being confronted by Matt Barnes and he was totally inarticulate and just mumbled and also was like, I was going to whoop that guy's ass, you got a problem with that? I would say, I have no problem with that, Mr. Barnes. At 57.34, I'm concerned, Matt, about slee stacks.
He's another guy who gets lost in time.
Because the slee stacks are the bad guys from Land of the Lost.
Yeah, Land of the Lost.
If you're going to get lost in time, Matt, there's only one solution. Do you know what it is?
You got to time machine it.
Yeah. Matt, at 58.11, Bill tries to ask a question and cannot remember the question he's trying to ask.
How did you feel right before the season stops? Who is actually going to win the title?
What he means is, who did you believe was going to win the title? But his question becomes so divergent that he cannot ask the right question. So what he says effectively is, how did you feel who was going to win the title?
How did you feel who was actually going to win the title?
Impertinent part, as they say. At 101.51.
Especially, I love being able to change speeds.
So fascinating, so brilliant. Great job, Spotify. That they were apparently the first and as yet only podcast player that can play slightly faster or slightly slower.
Yes.
At 103.43, possible misplaced that.
And then you look at that Indiana, that melee game.
Which Indiana, Matt?
That Indiana.
It was that one. He's trying to distinguish between the state of Indiana and the archaeologist. And possibly Indiana Jones's dog, which, as his dad said, was also named Indiana.
Yes.
Turns out the Ringer did a great thing. At 106.04, Bill's trying to talk about the protest the Clippers team did against Donald Sterling's virulently racist acts. Virulent? Whatever the word is. What they did was play.
Do you look at that and go, why the fuck didn't we play?
They did play.
Yeah, they did play. The question is wrong. It would be more like, why did we play? At 111.20, this Joe Bluth nominee.
I don't think, obviously.
At 112.11, my favorite Joe Bluth nominee, a bailing one.
It was typical talking head. I'm like,
at 119.10, he means changed with a D.
Because we've seen it in how the league has changed, right?
How has the league changed?
The league is no longer bothering itself with electronic financial record keeping. Instead, it's just a jar of pennies.
The league has
changed.
Oh, okay. Makes sense.
At Matt, this was bordering on the obscene. At 124.26, famously white, famously 50 years old, famously guy, as he says in his most recent apology, Bill tries to say this to Steven Jackson and Matt Barnes as if it's natural.
I don't use notes when I do a podcast. I want people to feel like we're having a conversation and kicking it like that.
Bill, known for his kicking itness.
Please, Bill, I beg you.
Also, he definitely does use notes during a podcast. He's repeatedly referenced notes, in particular when he's doing like the redraftables or whatever. Turns out Bill is one of the best of all basketball fans. Just listen to him tell us at 133.51.
I feel like I follow basketball at the highest level.
He's not saying he plays basketball really well. He's saying that he is a very, very good basketball watcher. Like the top 1 percentile of basketball consumers.
I'm not a huge hyperbole guy.
Matt, this feels like a weird Animal Farm reference somehow. 137.46.
I think the reason I like both of you guys over a lot of the other reasons was...
All reasons are equal. Some reasons,
Some
Matt,
are
are
more
more equal than other reasons. At 140.11.
At the Team USA, when they did that.
At the Team USA.
At 142.30, bad branding.
The BS Pod.
Matt, that's it for 2 weeks ago.
Oof.
We got any more energy?
Barely.
Let's see you
Marshall,
run this back.
Will, and Holly on a expedition. Met the greatest earthquake ever known. High on the rapids, it struck their tiny raft.
It's the most Bill Simmons idea possible.
Here are all the things Bill and his guests found delicious in the last week. Or just funny sounds.
Oh. Oh.
We don't have no stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
And because I promise you, you will enjoy this podcast or your money back.
Matt, last week, there were 3 podcasts on the Bill Simmons podcast.
Am I live right now?
The first was with Russillo, 143.46, not bad. Then Redraftables with Kevin O'Connor and Joe House, 150-151. Then a quarantine mailbag plus Michael Lewis, terrible
So
laugh,
dumb.
plus Jason Bateman, 234.55.
Yeah, just ridiculous.
Goodness gracious sakes alive. It's the Bill Simmons podcast, part 2.
Here we go.
I screwed up.
At 0 seconds in, bad branding.
Today's episode of the BS Podcast.
At 152, Pearl Jam. Matt, had you been concerned that you did not know what time zone we were in?
I was worried.
At 2:12, we find out.
Pacific time.
At 2:30, luckily Ryan calls him out on this, but I think it still merits mention.
I'm like a guy in the desert who just sees like a saltine cracker. And it's like, oh my God, that's a saltine cracker.
What is he talking about? A guy in the desert. I can definitely see a guy in the desert thinking, oh my God, it's water. That is so great. I cannot see a guy in the desert caring one way or another about a saltine cracker unless he sees the saltine cracker as he's dying of thirst and thinks to himself, what an extra insult. I'm out here dying of thirst and now you give me this goddamn saltine cracker? He's a saltine cracker. At 5:03, this is what I wrote. Joe Bluth nominee, hard.
Yeah, it was hard. It was, first of all, hard not to root for him, and also hard for me just to root for Peyton Manning.
It's a lot
It
of
was
hardness,
hard.
Matt. Yeah, there
Hard.
was.
Yeah.
At 5:10, more genealogical research.
Just, it was all the Pats DNA coming up. So that was fun.
I feel like if all the Pats DNA was coming up from Bill, it seems like that might actually be a violation of some sort of legal statute. You know what I mean? Also, I don't think DNA really works like that. If there is New England Patriots genetic material, it would not be the DNA. It would be parts of the DNA, like the specific Patriot amino acids or peptides or something that make up the DNA.
This is too much.
No, have I gone overboard on my anti-DNA? At 9:37?
They probably hit 17 of the check marks they needed to hit.
No, he should have said checkpoints. I don't know why they would have an arbitrary number of 17 checkpoints. But I definitely don't think they're going out there and hitting things that have been checked off with check marks.
Right.
At 11:34, this is like a lot of genital abuse.
Put your sack on the table and just make it.
Oof.
Put your sack on the table, and then what?
Why would somebody
happens?
put their sack on the table? I don't
I think
understand
the
what that would
idea is,
accomplish.
what you do is you retrieve your testicles and the scrotum from inside your clothes. And while they're still attached to you, you place them, you lay them on a table so others can see and appreciate them. And then at that point, your basketball shot goes through the hoop, right?
Okay. Now that you said it.
At 11:39, Jordan approves.
It's nut crunch time and all these different moments.
How many different moments? Possibly 17. At 19:59, Matt, I'm going to play you the tagline, and then you guess what the ad was for, okay?
Okay.
Stay safe, my friends.
The tagline, Matt, stay safe, my friends.
Yeah.
What do you think is being advertised there?
Dos Equis.
That would be a good guess. Actually, the best Bill Simmons podcast sponsor, probably Simply Safe. In this case,
Stamps.com, enter BS. Stay safe, my friends.
stamps. Don't go out to dangerous post offices. At 24:30, very specific.
But just going that whole way like that. So there's a lot of stuff out there right now.
At 26:19, Matt, I thought we were talking about meat yet again, but I'm simply not sure.
If you put the last 2 seeds in each playoffs at stakes.
I guess he means at stake.
Yeah.
But maybe what
I
you're going
still
to
don't
do
think
is
it
you're going to get some beef, and then you will put the seeds, which also can be eaten,
At the
beef.
steaks. Maybe they're sesame. It's like a Japanese dish.
Steaks.
At 26:55,
Doing the speed rush.
it's not just a regular rush, Matt. It's not the kind of hurry up and rush that we're used to. It's the kind of hurry up and rush that is done hastily. Listen to the profanity, Matt, without an article. at 27-27.
In Staples is a huge fucking advantage.
What he means is it's a huge fucking advantage, or potentially an huge fucking advantage. At 35:01, out of context theater.
I'm like 50% in.
I guess he's bragging. Maybe he's telling whoever he's talking to that means there's twice as much.
Can you believe it?
Good news, folks.
You just stopped. Hey, I'm only 50% in.
Yes.
Oh my!
And that doesn't even count putting my sack on the table. At 41:52, this botch.
A doctor will prescribe.
At
You'll receive your
41:58,
custom
this
skincare
botch.
treatment with free. Your custom skincare treatment with free.
At 43:13, I think he means playoff win.
Culminating in the 2012 thing, but
Why bother to tell us?
Matt, at 44:34, it's good to hear a little cartography.
You agree
there's
with
no
this, right?
roadmap on the earth that exists.
What he's saying is there's no roadmap on Earth that exists by which you can navigate to Dwayne Wade being in the top 15 all time in the NBA.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Since it's not a place.
It's a weird figurative use of roadmap. He cannot figure out in his mind how to get there, and there is no possible way on Earth that he can figure out in his mind, which is typically, as far as I'm understanding it, either on Earth or sort of within Earth's atmosphere. And that simply is non-existent. It turns out, did you know this, that the reason Bill was not talking to players until after he wrote Book of Basketball 1.0, the one that matters, was because he was doing that consciously? I had
Didn't know.
Until he said this at 47:42.
I really tried to avoid players until after I wrote my book.
That just sounds like the biggest load of bullshit that he has said in the past 2 weeks.
I'm not a huge hyperbole guy.
There's no way he was thinking to himself, I got to finish this book, but I don't want my interactions with players to in some way insert biases or prejudices in my writing, so I just will not interact with them. That is fucking preposterous. At 48:58 thing.
Captain Jack and Barnes, and we had a Kobe Duncan thing.
He means debate or conversation or discussion. At 49:56, this Joe Bluth nominee.
I don't think they win in 08 and 09 or.
At 52:52, just desserts.
And then the 03 season is the cherry and the sundae where.
How did the cherry on the sundae occur that early? Is he talking about it's the cherry on the Spurs Sunday? Didn't they go on to win like 2 more titles?
Yeah.
I'm concerned that he has started to slip. It's one thing to botch articles or the weird roadmap thing or putting 50% in, but it's another thing to misunderstand the architecture of a Sunday. At 53:04, the swallow.
Captain Jack is weirdly like.
At 55:32, unnecessary article.
Really, the Orlando was the only hiccup.
At 1 hour 52 seconds, this swallow.
I think he felt like.
At 102:43, this cliche has just got to end.
Go research that relationship and you'll understand why she's not in it. I mean, it's not fucking chess here.
Once again, Bill is proposing that Michael Jordan's first wife's exclusion from the Michael Jordan show.
Intentional.
Right. And the reason is so easy to figure out that it is the opposite of the hard to figure out board game chess.
I think he's trying to say it's not complicated, I guess.
Matt, that makes way too much sense. We're leaving that out. At 113:47, I think Bill's holding a grudge here.
Because the Lance Armstrong thing premiered tonight on ESPN, which I have not seen.
Bitter.
Very.
At 116:13, A1.
He's the one who came back.
Could have said he's a guy, player, person, individual. He's a one. At 122:35, the best kind of Joe Bluth nominee, a bailing one.
Because in 2020, you're not allowed to feel it's like, oh man, it's just.
At 124:27, unnecessary article.
In 96, when he hit the 50 homers.
At 126:27, sometimes you have to do something in some direction, but not a lot.
We wanted to end each podcast with something fun, something a little going backwards.
It wasn't something he wants to be specific about.
It's
definitely something that is in motion. It is going. And it's definitely something that is in motion that is not going forward.
Backwards.
And it is a small something.
A little.
That's all you need to know.
Of course.
At 127:10, this was not invented as a thought, apparently.
It wasn't even conceived as a notion yet.
There is no fucking way you need to say that. If it is a notion, which means it's like a thought or an idea.
Right. Then it has been conceived of.
Right. Yes. How can you do anything but conceive something first? Maybe if it was like an instinct or a reflex. If your doctor hits you on the knee and your foot kicks out, You're
Like, I didn't
I did that
conceive of
without
that.
even. Yeah, exactly. There was no notion, just the motion. At 128.02, talking about the When We Were Kings documentary, which actually I've gone back and tried to find on streaming and haven't been able to, but I have found like clips of it. I did forget how great it was. As far as I could tell, there were no people doing interviews. There were people being interviewed, but no people doing interviews, contrary to this at 128.02.
Maybe have a couple more interviewers. It's a lot of Norman Mailer. It's a lot of George Plimpton.
Probably means interviewees.
Yes.
It's not like Norman Mailer and George Plimpton were interviewing people on the show.
Right. They were being interviewed.
At 139.46, this swallow.
It ends 4:45 whenever.
We'll be back again after this.
Again.
Listen, man, I'm not turning my nose up at food. Do you hear that? Food? Sponsor us. The Bill Simmons Podcast.
Brought to you by
Food. And executive producer, Pierre. Now, on the second podcast of really last week.
Right.
This is an unnecessary article, and I'm still not sure what he's talking about.
They put up the season 12, and then there's going to be winners and losers.
He's talking about the Way Down Deep in the Hole podcast about The Wire. He says they put up the season 12.
They put up the season 12.
Well, first of all, The Wire went 5 seasons.
Right.
Maybe he means they put up episode 12.
I think you called it Way Down Deep in the Hole.
What is it called?
I think it's just way down in the hole. But way down deep in the hole, it's like, it's way down there.
Yes.
Deep.
Yeah, it's a philosophical conversation about The Wire's theme song. But if he meant to say they put up the episode 12, then he shouldn't have used the. So it's definitely an unnecessary article. And also, he used the wrong word and made it hopelessly confusing. At 156, Pearl Jam. At 310, this laughter. Matt, it's one thing to test the waters by dipping only your toe into them. Bill suggests more at 12:11.
It could be a way for them to dip their foot into that.
Just
They
the
don't
whole
want to
thing.
dip just their toe in. They want to test it.
It's not
a
enough.
lot
You won't be
more.
able to tell.
Right. Matt, it's no big deal for the casual basketball fan to say this at 20 minutes and 6 seconds. But for somebody who claims on the record to follow basketball at the highest level
The
to
highest.
get this wrong, it's a little embarrassing.
Unfortunately for the 4 or 5 teams, but that's just the way it goes. You didn't win your league.
The NBA is a league. It is broken down into conferences, and each of the conferences is then broken down into divisions. So it's not like the 4 or 5 seeds failed to win their league. They failed to win their conference and potentially their division. It goes without saying they didn't win their league, or they would be NBA champions. Redundancy here at 2035.
If they can't get one of the first top 2 seeds,
At 25:41, listen to this long pause and then the explanation.
Why not the Stern Cup?
I think
that
that's
fair?
solid. I'm nodding. People can't see me nodding.
Unreal.
First of all, there's no way that's true. Because wouldn't Kevin have said something if he was nodding? Like, okay, yeah, this is fucking bullshit.
What you would think is that the professional podcaster who likes to talk about having done podcasts for a living for like 13 years would have remembered, oh, wait, I'm supposed to be talking to this microphone so people can hear me. And I'm just sitting here with a head gesture for like 6 seconds. At 28:53, he means podcasts.
Wherever you get your podcasts,
At 32:06 to swallow.
take these unproven guys.
Matt, listen to the number of people at 34:21 that Bill lists, and then listen to how many he says should have 30 for 30s.
Sebastian Telfair,
There's one.
Robert Swift,
There's
Okay,
one.
2,
Right?
Delonte West.
3.
Then he says,
Those are two 30 for 30s.
which two? Telfair,
Well,
Swift, or West?
you got to pick.
At 42:05, this Bale.
That might have been if Vince Carter
At 47:30, Joe Bluth nominee.
Crappa takes 22 and Monia 23.
At 51:09, Bill's genital abuse continues.
He threw his dick around like a salami.
Oh, God. First of all, do people throw salamis?
No, well, you're the Italian American, Matt. I was hoping we were going to
No.
get some clarification from you.
No, we don't.
Yeah, there's not a lot of salami getting thrown around. And if there were, would it be positive that your was getting thrown like a salami? I got 2 examples. One is at that seafood place in Seattle where they chuck fish. Whereas
Yeah,
if you were a guy
the
who was
market.
doing that with your penis, doesn't sound great. Certainly doesn't seem complimentary. The only other one I can think of is there's a famous restaurant in Sikeston, Missouri, whose name escapes me. and it's called the home of the throwed rolls. And if you want to roll, they will throw it across the restaurant to you. Even then, doesn't seem like a real stick man kind of analogy. Now, meatballs, on the other hand.
It's a whole different story.
At 58.19, perfect execution on thin usage. That's a perfect explanation. We believed a trade was in the works, so we had the whole thing, and then we're setting up for it, naturally. Right. At 58.58, try to parse this, Matt.
Number one scorer on a best team.
On a best team.
He wasn't the number one scorer on a good team. He was the number one scorer on a best team.
A best team.
Matt, my favorite botch of last week, when Bill decides to talk about his weight fixation at 1 hour, 37 seconds.
Try to create some calorie space.
He's saving his calories for the end of the day. He's using like MyFitnessPal, and he's thinking, I'm going to skip breakfast, I'm going to skip lunch, I'm going to have a snack of like hummus and celery, and I'm creating calorie space because I'm going to just straight knock out 2 greasy domino pies at about 9:30 tonight. But I can because of all that calorie space.
Makes sense. It's like my whole life. This is how I eat. Except it's more like create calorie space all week, engorge self on weekend.
You're a calorie space invader.
Yes. Oh, okay, good.
At 105.21, thank you. This swallow.
You know, he was a guy.
At 115.03. Matt, this might be the first time you're truly judging something on this episode.
There's a whole other scenario.
CH.
Yeah, gotta be. At 121.01. I don't know if Stan Van Gundy could buy him out in part.
Stan Van Gundy's just buying him out whole.
How else would you buy somebody out? Listen, we know you have $80 million left on your contract. We will give you $57 million, and then you will play every fourth and a half game. How's that sound? At 123.56, this snort. At 134.28, this Joe Bluth nominee.
2011, and which was a real upset.
At 145.36, here we go again.
I think there's an alternate universe where he doesn't get hurt and we do this draft and he's either first or second and probably first.
Can you imagine an alternate universe where he doesn't get hurt and then, despite the fact that it's a divergent universe, everything else happens the same? And Bill and who is this? Kevin O'Connor?
Yeah.
Do a redraftable and they decide, well, we're going to take him first or second in the redraftable.
Right.
At 149.29.
Bino Udre, we also didn't get drafted.
How does he say we? I'm just at a loss for words. He also didn't get drafted is fine. We also didn't draft.
Right.
We also didn't get drafted. At 149.35, this swallow.
If he's your third guard, not ideal.
At 149.44, this swallow.
Who? Vujicic. Sorry, Zach Lowe.
Matt, have you ever heard the turn of phrase, he had a cup of coffee in the majors or something like that?
Yeah, sure.
Listen to Bill's bastardization at 149.56.
Chris Duhon had a couple cups of coffee of potentially being somebody.
Yeah, that's just not how it works. You can have a couple cups of coffee in the league, but you don't get a couple cups of coffee of potentially being somebody. That's just not how the coffee cup thing works. So for the amount of time during which you could have figuratively drunk a cup of coffee, you were potentially someone.
Yes.
It almost sounds like a weird pro-life, pro-choice debate, but somehow involves liquid caffeine. At 150.24, this snort.
What about Manya?
At 150.48, this laughter. At 151.09, bad branding.
We will have one more BS podcast again.
Chris, one more time. Mercifully, we'll be back after this.
Matt, as always, we want to thank the people that support us monetarily, not the people that support us emotionally, because honestly, emotional support doesn't pay the bills the way Josh N., Jeff G., Scott B., Sean, and our friends at College Football Brothers Podcast support us with money. They do it through Patreon, patreon.com/bspodpod. You can also support us as David P. and Scott B. do through Anchor. That's anchor.fm/bspodpod. David, as we always say, you're giving us too much money. Also, I think Scott B. is possibly giving us money through Anchor and Patreon. Scott, it's not worth it. Thank you very much to our producers. Speaking of suffering, Matt, did you see the Reddit graph that listed the number and demographic identity of the Bill Simmons podcast guests?
You mean the Bill Simmons podcast guests? No, we have no
Bill
guests.
Simmons podcast guests have included one time your wife said a word.
Yep. Yeah.
The demographic breakdown all time of the Bill Simmons podcast guests: 100% female.
Yep.
100%
Good.
white.
Yeah, less diverse than we'd like.
100% Italian.
No, probably not.
Not going to follow up. Listen, all you people who are giving us money on Anchor and Patreon, we are not giving you anything back if you don't like this podcast.
No.
We are cheap pricks. Now, we may not be worth $82 million a year. Maybe that's because we hang on to a penny a little bit more than old Bill does, giving your money back. We, when I was a kid, we used to go to visit my grandparents, and they had a Monopoly game, like a really old Monopoly game with like wooden pieces, you know. And at one point I proposed something, and I think it was something like this, where two people would buy the same hotel or the same property. And somebody was quick to point out, like, it's in the rules, you can't do that. And I said, I don't remember it being in the rules. So they pulled out the rules, and somebody had written in, you cannot do that. And apparently my dad, when he was younger, had tried to pull that against my mom's family, and then they decided that we will make that a house rule. You cannot do it. And they wrote it in the rules.
I like it.
Speaking of suffering, Matt, did you see the Reddit graph that listed the number and demographic identity of the Bill Simmons podcast guests?
You mean the Bill Simmons podcast guests? No, we have no
Bill
guests.
Simmons podcast guests have included one time your wife said a word.
Yep. Yeah.
The demographic breakdown all time of the Bill Simmons podcast guests: 100% female.
Yep.
100%
Good.
white.
Yeah, less diverse than we'd like.
100% Italian.
No, probably not.
Not going to follow up.
A lot of good stuff in this podcast.
Matt, the sixth and final podcast of the last 2 weeks. This was the quarantine mailbag, then Michael Lewis and Jason Bateman. At 52 seconds, your judgment.
A whole bunch of stuff in their first episode.
I think that's H's.
1-1?
Yeah, 1-1.
I also like how he really punches bunch. A whole bunch.
A whole bunch.
At 154, Pearl Jam. At 3 minutes and 4 seconds, I think he means asks.
He asks.
At 4 minutes and 3 seconds, unnecessary article.
Put him in there for the Major League Baseball. Put him with A-Rod.
At 5 minutes and 47 seconds, this Joe Bluth nominee.
The amount of people that watch a Monday Night Football game.
At 6:39, listen to what is extended.
People in my extended life, couples that I've heard.
Is he talking about the fact that he presumes as a very rich white man, he's just going to live longer than everybody else?
No, maybe it's like back in like the mid 2000s when everybody was doing that thing, Second Life.
Oh, yeah.
Where you had like an avatar.
I think it's the same thing. It's like that new Amazon show where they cut your head off and then vaporize it. Yeah. And then you go into your extended life.
Yeah, okay.
Which possibly includes your family.
Yeah.
It really blows it for me as far as I'm concerned. If something is going to move more quickly than normal, do not call it this at 10 minutes.
There was more enthusiasm for the shortened, raced-up baseball schedule of 80 games, 90 games leading into the playoffs.
What a perfect time in American society to use that turn of phrase. At 10 minutes and 16 seconds, I think this is a bad conjunction, or possibly an unnecessary R.
If you own baseball stock.
Now remember, Matt, this is the mailbag. So what he's doing is looking at emails sent in by readers, he means listeners, because he doesn't write, so they can't read, by himself. He could re-record any of this. So when he's talking about ass instead of asks, or the major league instead of major league, he could just re-record it. If he botches it, he could just do it over again. When he says, if your own baseball stock.
If your own baseball stock.
He could just say, let me take that one more time. Now I can understand why he would definitely not trust Kyle, but still, it's worth the effort. Like he could have done here at 11:03, unnecessary article.
The thing I was most excited for the baseball this season was
at 12:03
within league circles for making the salary cap go down. Now that's off his hands.
He means out of his hands. He means out of his hands. At 12:06, unnecessary article.
The Houston, I think, in a neutral site.
Man alive. This is just him by himself. At 12:10, I think he's either saying the word they or he's saying the word that, and both of those are incorrect.
No matter what playoff format that come out.
If he says playoff format that come out, it's wrong. It should be that comes out. If he says playoff format they come out, it's wrong because it should be that they come out with or they come out with. It's wrong regardless.
Maybe like us, Chris, he did all these podcasts in one day and was just done.
At 12 minutes and 38 seconds, he means masks.
COVID-19 masks that we see every day now.
At 12 minutes and 40 seconds, he means masks.
With quarantine masks.
At 16 minutes, this swallow.
And if a team goes up 3-0.
At 16:11, Matt, please judge Rich Bill Simmons.
It also heightens the stakes.
That's H's.
I could have seen that going either way. But that means H's are beating 2-1, right?
Yes.
At 1940, this swallow.
10 teams are out. Ryan,
As opposed to other athletes at 21:18.
is MJ the Ted Bundy of sports athletes?
I guess it's to differentiate him from non-sports athletes, maybe video gamers. What else is it?
They're athletes too, Chris.
Yeah, so, but are they sports athletes? That's the point.
It's a sport.
Matt, one of these things is
NASCAR.
not like, right, I was thinking golf too, you probably take issue with that.
Would.
One of these things is not like the other when talking about murderers at 21:31.
He'll rip your heart out. He's going for the jugular. He'll kill you.
You can't sleep on him.
He'll rip your throat out.
Did you pick up on the one that didn't seem like it belonged when we're talking about murderers?
Yes.
Rip throat out, rip heart out, cut jugular, kill you, can't sleep on him. Remember when everybody was like, man, the thing about Hannibal Lecter is you can't sleep on that
him.
dude.
I think it went unsaid.
Matt, you know how to pronounce this word? Criterion?
Criterion.
That's correct. No, it's not Criterion, Matt. But Bill thinks it is at 22:34.
Some Criterion stuff.
Now, Matt, it's tough to say Criterion.
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 It is not tough, or should not be tough, to say this word, especially when you can record it over at 22:31.
Crazy Rich Asians.
Asians, shh. I think he means Asians, since that's the name of the movie. At 22:57, this swallow.
Over everything else.
At 23:07, this swallow.
Things. I think this is the...
At 24:52, a triple, etc.
Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Wait, at 25:03, a botch.
Than they do for constructing the championship teams in the first place.
At 27:46, a botch.
While everyone is salivating at the potential of the Bucks with Brady and Gronk.
At 29:05, this swallow.
K started young and immature.
At 29:22, this botch.
HBK faded from the limelight. He's happy.
At 31:19, this botch.
A 2003 first round pick.
At 32:55, he means asterisk. That's asterisk with a K.
We were talking about an asterisk, right? Everybody thinks this is going to be an asterisk season for who doesn't remember the title.
At 33:12, a botch.
2012 had a strike shortened season, but...
And then he means asterisk again.
Nobody ever brings up the Heat title as an asterisk.
At 33:35, Matt can come back and tie it up.
And he was also hurt.
Oh, we're going to overtime, Chris.
Wow. two multiple H's, two. At 33:58, this swallow and possible snake noise.
They were robbed of. That's a fair point.
At 34:25, when he turns asterisk into a verb, I think he gets the K in there.
Why aren't they asterisked?
Yeah. So all you have to do is take off the T at the end, and you're going to say the word right.
Asterisk.
Jesus.
At 46:25, I didn't occur to me.
I didn't even occur to me. Like,
sounds like a weird, like Rastafarian.
It's like, yeah, I was going to say. It's like,
I and I.
I think, therefore I am.
At 54:25, he means distribute.
And then 3, how do you distribute it?
Distribute it.
Distribute.
At 56:33, I wish I could say this was a tiebreaker, but it's not. It's just multiple C's.
How to just not cluster?
At 102:31, almost a perfect trifecta of out-of-context theater. Saved by a single missing S at the end.
You could just have different balls for they're handling the person who's serving. They have different balls, and you could conceivably play tennis and never touch the other person's ball.
If you had only said, never touch the other person's balls, it would have just
been perfect.
At 104:59, a tidal level. That's TIDAL. Swallow.
Crammed into a basketball arena.
At 109:24, a Joe Bluth nominee, and then this nonsense.
Point on. I actually think it could have changed the course of how he got remembered. And
so how he got remembered was on one course. And then as a result of something, that course of how he got remembered could have been changed. At 111.29, this Joe Bluth nominee.
What do you want to go optimist? What optimistic thing do you want to talk about?
At 123.20, Matt, have you ever been to a show on Broadway?
Not on Broadway, but I've been to a Broadway type show.
I went to one. I saw Young Frankenstein, and we got cheap TKTS tickets and literally sat in the front row, like where you can like put your feet up on the orchestra thing. It was weirdly close. And the guy that played Young Frankenstein, I felt like kept making eye contact with me, and it really threw me. But it was a pretty good show. But that's the only time, at least as far as Bill is concerned, at 123.20, that I have been in Broadway.
Think about you're in Broadway.
Makes sense.
At 137.03, get ready for the movement.
If you're producing content, you have to be ready where things move as they move.
Maybe he means if you're producing content, you have to be ready when things move.
When things move.
Or to go to where things move. At 137.30, this bail.
And jump on whatever the new up. Those are the ones that usually seem to survive.
At 138.35, this botch.
Order online with the Cliff Go button.
At 143.56, this laughter. At 149.37, Matt, this is something you pointed out to me.
There's lines we won't cross. Like, we're not like, hey, to my 15-year-old daughter, hey, come watch season 3 of Ozark with us. Like
she can watch that.
No, that's what I'm saying. No, she can't. What are you talking about? You can't watch Ozark.
I'm glad that Bill has suddenly shown some discernment, but it seems to me what Bill will and will not let his kids watch. He makes that determination based not off of what he believes is appropriate for his children, but what it is uncomfortable for him to watch with his children. If he is comfortable watching like gross, raunchy humor or violence or cursing with his son, he does not want to watch sex scenes with his daughter.
In his defense, I think the sex scene at issue is between like a 65-year-old woman and like a 22-year-old dude.
Yes.
So it's uncomfortable all the way around, but it does seem like there's a huge double standard at play there.
No, she can't. What are you talking about? You can't watch Ozark.
At 2 hours, 7 minutes, and 5 seconds, this swallow.
2:30 in the morning. And then go back.
Laughter at 2:19.35. And more laughter at 2:19.50.
Good for you.
This might be a personal question, but it bears on what Bill says at 2:23.21. Have you ever worn tearaway pants?
Maybe.
Like basketball warm-up type pants?
Yes.
I've definitely been in the same room as them, but I can't say that I've ever specifically worn them. I don't think Bill has either, because I don't think he understands how they work. Listen to him describe it.
In the crotch, I guess, is where it is fixed, right?
It's basically shorts with like legs zipped next to it that when you tear it off, the legs just come off, basically. Like 2/3 of the way around your leg.
No.
That's not it at all.
First of all, if they were shorts, they would not be tearaway pants. They would be pants with removable legs. The way tearaway pants work is they're like pants, except for the side seams have buttons, or maybe they have Velcro or something like that. And so what you do is you tear them, and then those side seams just come apart. And as Jason Bateman correctly surmises, the crotch stays together. The idea that they are shorts that you can just remove parts of is so far out of... Hey, does he not watch basketball? Remember that whole thing? A few years ago when... it was an all-star game, and somebody like Grant Hill or Anthony Hardaway stood up, and Jordan tried to sort of pull off the tearaway pants during the introduction.
Yes.
And it was like a whole funny hazing thing.
Yeah.
If they had been shorts, he just would have like exposed that guy's knee.
Right.
How does he not know this?
It's Bill.
At 2:29.21, this swallow.
What's your feeling on both those?
I mean, Slapshot's iconic.
At 2:29.33, this swallow.
Does. How many boxing movies have there been at this point? A cajillion?
Matt, thank you. It's been a long time. We are now done with the Bill Simmons podcast.
Until next time.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Matt.
I screwed up.
To the land of the
One time I was in high school and we had to do some project. And so I had a pig, and I named him Napoleon, and I thought it was great. And then the teacher was like, "You definitely like ripped that off from Animal Farm," and I was like, "I really don't think I did," but in retrospect, it seems like I did, but that was definitely not my intent. I also think she's the one who dimed me out because there was this other guy. His name was Larry. Can't remember his last name, and he was a biology teacher and high school PE teacher / coach, and he was always talking about the larynx and the pharynx, and it's like, no, it's larynx, and pharynx. So
Wrong.
we all assumed he was a dumb man, and we would talk on him, and then it got back to him somehow because then he confronted me about whether or not I thought he was a dummy, and then I was like, I was pretty sure it was that English teacher who gave it up. She tried to be cool, but she definitely narked.